What's going on, people? Joey Talks Boxing. I want to talk about Deontay Wilder and his career, and I'm going to do a career full review, kind of like what I did with Tyson Fury. So, Deontay Wilder is from Alabama, Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Heavyweight boxing is not really that popular in America. I think mainly because a lot of the people, as Max Kellerman said, a lot of the young, big athletes, in size, they go into the NBA or the NFL. Whereas back in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and before that even, you didn't have a lot of high-paying jobs in the NFL or the NBA. So the money was in boxing. There were no big outside linebackers or defensive ends making $100 million. There were no NBA stars with these, $400, $500 million contracts. It didn't exist. So Wilder himself even said that he wanted to be a heavyweight, a wide receiver for the Alabama, Crimson Tide. He didn't go down. He had some great problems. I don't know if he was such a great football player. But the guy gets into boxing late. The reason he got into boxing, and I believe 20 years old he was when he started, he said that it was because his daughter had a disease and he wanted to make enough money to, support his daughter. And how could he do it? He had to become a pro. He had to become a pro boxer, get this money. And he thought that he was just going to be a journeyman. Like, I'm just going to be a journeyman fighter and try to get my bills paid. He said he went to the boxing gym in Alabama and it just clicked. He's like, I belong here. Like, this is where I belong. Even though he never boxed before, I don't think anyone in his family ever boxed before. I think his father was like a minister or something. It just clicked. And in a few years, he becomes an Olympic bronze medalist. That is crazy for someone who just started boxing at such an old age. But he was gifted. He had the height, he had the reach. And boy, did he have the power. he hits like a truck, Deontay Wilder. Now, he becomes a pro, and his career was managed very carefully. He won a bunch of fights. He had a lot of build-up fights. And I would say his first real test of anyone of note would probably be against former Olympic heavyweight gold medalist Audley Harrison. He knocks him out in the first round in 2013. And at this point, I think Deontay was put in the top 10 in the heavyweight division. Maybe he was a little bit before that, but he had broken into the top 10 of Ring Magazine, the unofficial boxing rankings that people go by usually. He was put in the top 10. I think after he beat Liakovic, a former world champion or challenger. I think he held the title at one point. And then he fought Malik Scott, a guy who became his trainer. He actually knocked Malik Scott out in the first round, as funny as that is. But he was like moving his way up, kind of. Now, the rumor is, I don't know if this is true or not, but he was offered a fight with Vladimir Klitschko in 2013, and he turned the fight down. If that is true, there's a great move by his team because he was not ready in 2013 for Vladimir Klitschko. Vladimir Klitschko would have knocked him out, I think, and would have ruined a lot of bigger plans going forward. But he was built very carefully. And Al Heyman and PBC and Shelley Finkel and Lou DiBella, they realized what they had here. They had a black American heavyweight potential superstar with unbelievable knockout power, and he had some swag. He was charismatic as well. That's rare. We have not had a heavyweight great from America since Evander Holyfield. That was the last one. And he has not been champion since like 2000, or really since Lennox, but he held some belts and stuff. But point is, that's a long time ago. We did not have an American great during the Klitschko era. The best heavyweights during the Klitschko era were Vladimir Klitschko, Vitaly Klitschko, David Haye, and Alexander Povetkin. Now, we had guys that had held the title for short periods of time, like Layman Brewster when he knocked out Vladimir Klitschko. Chris Bird had some good wins. Hasim Rahman, obviously, knocking out Lennox Lewis. So there were guys from America who had held the title, but none were really dominant champions the way Evander Holyfield, Mike Tyson, even Riddick Bowe. We could go back to him. And then, obviously, before that, you had Larry Holmes and, Muhammad Ali, so on and so on. Sonny Liston, Joe Frazier, George Foreman. All the great heavyweights were American, but there was a big drought. So Wilder was going to be the guy who was going to bring it back to the American forefront. And he really got a lot of the American public back into it. And you can't take that away from him. And that's why he's really dear to American boxing fans' hearts, because he was our guy. And especially for my generation, we never had a great heavyweight. So he was the closest thing we had from a great American heavyweight. And from even the older fans, they like the fact that they the heavyweight division is relevant again in the United States. It wasn't relevant for many years. And with the fights with Fury, that drew a lot of attention here. And with the potential fights with Anthony Joshua, that was a talking point in this country. Like, wow, we got our guy. He could knock out the UK guy. So you got to keep that in mind. That was big for us, because all the great heavyweights now are either from Europe, like Usyk or the Klitschko's, or England, Fury and Joshua. And even like most of the contenders are not American. We don't even have a lot of contenders, really. Yeah, Andy Ruiz won a title versus Joshua. You have guys like Dominic Brazil, but not a lot. Chris Arreola. We had some contenders. Eddie Chamber. I'm not Eddie Chamber. Calvin Brock. Just different guys that were like in the mix, but he was going to be the guy. It was a long time since America had a heavyweight at that level who was that dangerous, in my opinion. I think that it's probably been since Holyfield. I know that Bird probably has a better resume, but I think Wilder overall is a more talented heavyweight. Hasim Rahman also, I know he beat Lennox, but Wilder's more talented. I think he's more talented than John Ruiz, Layman Brewster, so on and so on. So we get into this era of heavyweight boxing, and Vladimir Klitschko holds 3 titles at this point. The other title was held by his brother Vitaly. Vitaly Klitschko retires. The belt becomes vacant. And then when the belt became vacant, it was, not really highly regarded at the time. Nobody really cared. And it was between, I believe, Chris Arreola and Berman Stavern was for the vacant title for the WBC. Stavern beats Arreola. I think, it was nobody really cared about the fight, but he did beat him. So at this point, Stavern is represented by Don King. Don King and the WBC, they have a relationship for a very long time. So he was able to get his guy, Berman Stavern, a title shot with the WBC for the vacant title. Al Heyman sees an opportunity, like, whoa, my guy Deontay Wilder is on the come up. We could get a belt. All we got to do is beat Berman Stavern. And if Wilder gets a belt, his marketability is there, because he can't really sell fights without the belt. And even when he got the belt, it was hard for him to sell fights if he wasn't fighting good people. But he needs that WBC belt. He needs to be called a champion. And he goes in there, fights versus Berman Stavern. And to Wilder's credit, a lot of people thought that he wasn't going to win the fight, but he does win the fight. He actually won the fight by decision. His only victory of his career that was not by knockout. And he wins a UD, dominant, basically wins every single round of the fight. Shows that he could box better than people gave him credit for, but versus a much lower tier opponent, Berman Stavern. Maybe he was in the top 10 at the time, but he did hold the belt at the time, and he did get his belt. So Wilder, he becomes WBC champion. But at this point, nobody seriously considers him the guy. It's Vladimir Klitschko's still the guy. Later that year, Vladimir Klitschko loses to Tyson Fury, which makes Tyson Fury the guy. Now at this point, they're like, oh, we could do a Wilder and Fury fight. They were even talking about it back then. Wilder then defends his title versus Eric Molina, lower tier, not even in the top 10. Johan Duhaupas, he was also in the top 20. Arthur Spilka, also in the top 20. He's fighting guys that are not there. Now, to his credit, he did want to fight Povetkin. Povetkin failed the drug test. Povetkin, I think, was the mandatory, and he lost his mandatory spot when he failed the test, I believe. He then fought Arreola, beats him by knockout, Gerald Washington. So he's fighting top 20-ish, maybe borderline top 15-ish heavyweights, but nobody of real note. Now, to his credit, he wanted to fight Luis Ortiz prior to that when he fought some of these other guys. Luis Ortiz had failed some drug tests. So he was supposed to fight Ortiz, who was ranked in the top 10, and some people even said in the top 5 at the time, but it got postponed. So he was trying to fight Ortiz and Povetkin, but it didn't happen. He then was supposed to fight Ortiz, but he failed another drug test, Luis Ortiz. So then Berman Stavern, he gets into the, a rematch with Wilder. He knocks him out in the first round. great. I would say his first really tough test was in 2018 when he fought Luis Ortiz. Now, it's funny how he used the excuse that he doesn't want to fight Povetkin because Povetkin failed the drug test. But then he fought against Luis Ortiz, who failed 2 drug tests, and he still fought him anyways. So to me, that was more like you just don't want to fight Povetkin because he's too dangerous. But Luis Ortiz won the first 5 rounds. He hurt Wilder, but Wilder showed his chin. He showed his heart. He drops Luis Ortiz in round 5, I believe it was. Maybe it was round 6. I think it was round 5. And then he drops him in round 10, and then he drops him again in the 10th round, stops him, showed his heart, showed his grit, and you're like, okay, like, you got to give it to Wilder. Because a lot of people thought Ortiz was going to beat him. They thought that was too tough of a test. Ortiz was ranked in the top 5. Maybe he was 5 or 6 at the time. That was a big-time win, and he showed his heart as well. Then he fights Tyson Fury. Now, Fury at this point, he had just had 2 tune-up fights. He had been out of the sport for a long time. I thought he was going to destroy Fury. And what do we see? Fury's outboxing him with ease. He dropped Fury in the 9th round, but that was more of a balance shot. Fury's on his way to winning the title on the road and regaining. I know it was a different belt, but beating Klitschko on the road, and then he would have beaten Wilder on the road. And that's really impressive considering what people thought of him, after his break from boxing. And he catches Fury in that 12th round. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's over. But then Fury miraculously gets up and he goes on to get a draw. Most people thought Fury won, but I don't think a draw was ridiculous. What they should have done, or what I would have wanted to see, was an immediate rematch. But because the fight wasn't a big enough fight as far as pay-per-view numbers go, it only did about 300,000 in the States, they wanted to build it up and they wanted to make the fight bigger. So what they do is they make the fight, they're going to have 2 fights. Fury fights versus Tom Schwartz, Nala Lin. Wilder fights against Dominic Brazil, knocks him out in the first round. Very impressive fashion, but it was really a tailor-made opponent, a guy who has no head movement and is really stiff. And then he fought Luis Ortiz in a rematch. Again, you had a problem fighting Povetkin with the steroids, but you're going to fight a guy who failed 2 drug tests twice. In this fight, he was losing every single round of the fight, but he didn't even care. The way he was fighting, it was like he knew he was going to be able to land the right hand. And I was watching the fight. I'm like, is he just going to lose every round? Is he content with this style? And then in that 7th round, boom, he hits him with the right hand. Fight's over, and you get hyped up for the Tyson Fury rematch. Obviously, Fury beat him up in the second fight. He made every single excuse in the book, and that's where he really lost me, and he lost a lot of fans, was with all the excuse-making he did after the second Fury fight. It was a tough look. Now, in the third Fury fight, he got dropped in the 3rd round, but he did drop Fury unexpectedly twice in the 4th round, and I'm like, whoa, we are in for a ride. Unbelievable heavyweight fight. Both guys showed a ton of heart. Deontay Wilder showed that he has a tremendous amount of heart. And when he said he was willing to die in the ring, he meant it. And that's why I think people really, really relate to Wilder, because he has so much heart. Similar to Errol Spence when he was fighting Crawford. He was mad at the ref for stopping the fight. He wanted to keep going. They really believed that they could win no matter what. And that's why you got to love him, from a competitive standpoint. That's really what we want from our boxers, is fight until, do your best. Obviously, you're not going to always win every fight. Things happen. You get caught with punches. You might fight a guy who's a bad style, more skilled, more power, better chin, bigger, faster, whatever. Show your heart. And Wilder did that to the highest degree in that fight. So big credit to him. Then he fights against Robert Lanius. That was like a tune-up fight. I was there. Knocked him out in the first round. Unbelievable. Crowd's going wild. And now he has this fight with Joseph Parker after a long laugh, where he basically lost every single round of the fight. I think 2 judges had a 10-2. 1 judge had a 12-0. Whatever it was clearly a loss. So when you look at his career, he was protected for a long time. He didn't fight against big punchers. He only has 3 wins versus top 10 heavyweights. Ortiz twice and Berman Stavern. That's just the reality of it. The Joshua fight didn't happen when it was supposed to happen. And I look at his career like a Jerry Cooney or a David Tua or Ernie Shavers, someone more like that, than a George Foreman or a Mike Tyson, Vladimir Klitschko type. I know they showed the title defenses, but he didn't really have the real title. Like I said, he was never really the number 1 heavyweight. The number 1 heavyweight was Klitschko, then Fury, then Joshua. Then you could say Ruiz or Fury, for that show, whatever. Then Joshua regained it. Then it was Joshua or Fury. and you know, now Usyk or Fury. Very good heavyweight, marketed well, showed a lot of heart. He's not a great heavyweight. I don't think he's a Hall of Fame heavyweight, but he did restore or help bring back relevancy and excitement to the heavyweight division in America. So that's my take on Deontay Wilder's career. Let me know what you guys think. Please like, share, comment, subscribe. Peace.